I'm of course up here with Joe Malone, the wonderful, amazing Joe Malone, who also has a great book. There's a lot of great books today that we can talk about. I've got a little laundry list.
Have you now?
And then I'll have a question. I read your book. I stayed up till 3 a.m. reading it because I really did love it. You lay it all out. And forgive me, I'm going to read off my notes. Growing up, the good and the bad. Dropped out of school at age 15.
Mm-hmm.
You have dyslexia.
Yep.
Worked with your father and mother at times while growing up. Even later on, you were estranged from your family.
Yeah.
Built a business, a big, big global brand. You have a son. Had a son, have a son. Sold the big global brand. You took a break. You didn't get a break. You got cancer.
Yeah.
Recovered. Yay. Yay. Come on, everybody. Got religion of sorts after that. You bowed out of your own brand. You did a BBC show called High Street Dreams. You worked with other entrepreneurs. Then you decided to build a business again. And here you are building it. It's refreshing, so refreshing in this world to see someone so open, laying it all out, not sanitized.
Wow.
And you tell it. It really,
Thank you.
It moved me. And you tell this story to other entrepreneurs because it's really helpful. Why did you lay it all out? Or maybe I just answered it. Sorry.
Wow, those bullet points, I might borrow those. They're great. I think I was asked so many times to tell my story. When I recovered from cancer, I mean, I was given 9 months to live here in this country, and I was a woman of 38 years old with a young son, everything in life to live for, and that wasn't good enough for me. I went through a year's treatment, came through the other end, and I just felt that, you know, life's to be lived and enjoyed, and was that the time to really write my story? But I felt in a really low point of my life after that. I'd done chemo for a whole year.
Hard chemo. Chemo's never easy, but you did it.
I did every 5 days for almost, 6 to 8 months, and my body was to the wall by the end of it, but it worked. Yeah. And you know what? Thank you, Sloan Kettering, Larry Norton. Without that man, I wouldn't be sitting here today. So, but was that the time to write a book? I didn't want to write my book standing in between two mountains. I wanted to write the book standing on the top of the mountain. So I was very lucky to receive an award in Dubai, which is being inaugurated into the Retailers Hall of Fame. Tommy Figure and myself are standing there receiving. And I thought, this is standing on the mountainside. I'm ready to write this book. But I wanted to tell the truth. And you know what? Why is everyone so scared of the truth? The truth is the truth, historic, or not. And it was my perspective on my life, and I'm really proud of it.
Telling the truth, crucial to kind of being an entrepreneur, growing a business, kind of really being true all the way.
I told my perspective of a story. Someone said that's not how I saw it, but that's absolutely fine. It's how I saw it. It's what I lived. And I think what this story does, I go across the world now. Yeah. As I said to you a minute ago, I'm not the richest, the smartest, the prettiest, the thinnest, the wisest, nothing. But I have a story that gets people off their butt and motivates them to build. And that, I think, is one of the richest things that I have. I feel like it's a baton, and I want to hand it. I want to hand it to the next generation. I want to hand it to every SME that stands there every single day and thinks to themselves, is this worth it? And my answer is yes, it is.
So this wasn't my plan, but I've got to ask you. So, because you told me something back in the green room about a program that you're working on with curriculums.
Yes.
To teach kids to basically be, entrepreneurs?
Yes.
You
absolutely.
Explain.
So this was last summer. I have a teenager who was waiting for his results, and there were a whole group of young teenagers with us for the summer. And 2 of the young men didn't make the grade. Yeah. And I watched these charismatic, wonderful human beings stand there and start to diminish as human beings because they felt they weren't worth anything. They were told they couldn't go back to their school. And these kids are 17 years old. This is the next generation. Mm-hmm. These are the kids that have got to pick up this mess that we're in right now and move it forwards. And I realized, and I sat there and spoke to them, and I realized I really had to do something because I was that kid. I was the one that had nothing and felt second best.
And you had a teacher say something to you, didn't?
They made me stand on my chair once and told me I would never make anything of my life. I was dyslexic. I wasn't lazy or stupid.
Right.
I was dyslexic.
Right.
But going back to the curriculum, and I thought, right, what can I do? And I came up with this plan around my kitchen table, which is where all my good ideas start, let me tell you. And I thought, if we taught these young people entrepreneurialism from the age of 7 to 17, so for 10 years, and we made it part of a national curriculum, so it wasn't just maths, English, art, science. What we did as founders, creators, entrepreneurs, we joined the educational system, helped the educational system to make it real so that every child, no matter where they're born, how much money, where they went to school, how smart they are, we will find the jewel in every single child in our country and encourage them and show them how to build with that, that when they leave school, every child, it makes me tear up because that is something I will make happen, and I don't care how many people tell me no, I will find a way to make that happen for a next generation, and they deserve it.
What kept you going? Oh, yeah.
Help me. Help me. Thank you.
But what kept you going when people did tell you no, when a teacher told you no? You came from a tough background, right? It's not like you were given everything.
No, but I was taught to build. So my father was an artist. He was a brilliant artist. He was a member of the Magic Circle.
Yeah,
he was a magician, and he was also a big gambler. So from the age of 11, I would sell the paintings in the marketplace, and I would learn how to put the stall together. The magician's assistant, so I was the Debbie McGee, so I knew how rabbits appeared out of white hats. So I knew how to entertain and tell a story. And I also knew gambling was never a place I wanted to stand in. I saw it so destructive. So from the age of 11, I learned 3 valuable lessons, but I knew how to build. And when you know how to build, you can get yourself out of anything. But I was the sole breadwinner from probably the age of, 12, 13 years old. It was up to me to make sure the rent was paid. I know I don't look that old, but we did have gas and electric meters that used to put 2 shillings in to get your thing. And I would hoard the money because I knew that if my dad got hold of it, it would be gone. So I would hide it in places so I knew that we had electric and gas. And when I don't blame my parents,
Right.
but I think we're so scared of tough times. And tough times is the marketplace of opportunity.
Right.
It teaches you resilience. It teaches you to look at a situation from solving problems rather than just walking away from them.
There's something about that. I've interviewed a few folks who have built fortunes, who came from nothing, or at one point were living in their car. What is it about hard times?
It makes you a warrior. It puts business muscle onto you. And so whether you're a small SME or whether you're a large corporation, we're all facing, difficult decisions every single day.
Right.
And it's sometimes the way that we approach them and I think that's where the entrepreneur's mind is always it's a world of imagination. We imagine anything is possible and we go and we walk towards it. And I think, that's probably why you see a lot of those entrepreneurs who, from Ralph Lauren to Tommy Hilfiger,
Right.
I mean, you read the stories of entrepreneurs, not just people that have built businesses, people like Jesse Owens, who ran. He refused to hear that he couldn't run in the Olympics in Berlin. He came back with 4 Olympic gold medals for the United States.
Ha! I showed you.
Yeah, and he sure did. So sometimes I hear no still in my life more times than I hear yes. And that still doesn't deter me. And that may be that really dominant sort of go-getter in me. I don't know what it is, but I always will find a way. And I think that's the spirit that we need to harness right at the moment.
I want to talk to you about growing a business. I want to bring in our crowd here and just, first of all, ask a question to the audience, if I can. What do you prioritize most in order to achieve breakaway growth? Really just how to grow your business. And we have a poll, and Joe can take a look too. It's, is it product? Do you prioritize your product, your people, customers, or capital? So as these guys respond, people.
Wow.
That's coming in, customers. What do you think when you were building your business?
Sorry, because my dyslexia, I'm just...
Oh, forget.
That's okay.
So the product that you're selling, your people, right? Your workforce, thinking about your customers, or having the money. Well,
I'm going to be controversial here. I would say, okay, product's going. I would say unless your product is good enough, you can work hard at all those other things, but your product has to be the jewel. It has to be the heartbeat. It has to be the thing that you focus, that you feel passionate about, because without that, everything else feels a little dull and wasted. People...
You won't need people if the product isn't good, right?
If your product doesn't stand the test of time and it's not good, and you don't believe in it, then you know what? You can be running around in circles for a very, very, very long time. And if you don't love it, and your team don't love it, the customer's definitely not going to love it.
Right.
Product, for me, is number one. But with taking that product, and oh, look, there she is. She's growing now. You're listening.
Who changed their answers?
But without taking it, if you want to take a brand around the world, you're not going to be able to take that beautiful jewel of a product anywhere unless you have the right people. So people come really, really, close in. Then you start to tell your story. Tell story after story after story, authentic, real stories.
Does everything have a story?
For me, it does. Yeah. Every fragrance, everything that I'm involved in, I have to feel it, to believe it, to create it. And that's always the process I follow. But then the customer, you see, will then starts to trust you and believe in you. And so the whole thing then starts to... And what's the one at the bottom? Well, I suppose without capital, none of it works anyway. But, your bottom line has to obviously come into it. Otherwise, how do you pay everyone? How do you make it? But for me, product is number one.
Does anybody have a question to follow up on what Joe said? I don't want to... If anybody has... Go ahead. We'll just bring in the conversation. And just say your name, please, and your company.
Yeah, so Michael James from Tour International. It was interesting because I had a conversation with a couple of people earlier this morning, and one of the things that they were talking about, especially in sales, is that people want personal relationships. And that's where, I've heard of instances where the product's great, but they're just rubbish at selling. So it's kind of like, just wanted to see your thoughts on that particular aspect as well. Because I totally get if you don't have a very good product, people are not going to buy it. So...
Yeah. You're so right. I mean, that's a really interesting question as well, because you can have a great product. So somebody once told me that I could bottle pure gold, but unless I could tell the story to the consumer in a believable way, it was always going to sit on a shelf. And again, so it's not that one is more important and everything else is not, but I would say get the product right, get the team right, and so for us in Joe Loves, building a brand where I was so identified with that brand and breaking away and coming and having to start all over again. Joe Loves, we went and we lost our way. Joe Loves lost her way in the beginning. Why? I don't know why, but I did. And what happened was we forgot to tell the true stories of the brand. And when you start to tell stories and you start to communicate, people walk towards you. They want to know more. They want to know about your product. They want to know about you, Joe. What do you do? How can I want to live in the world that this brand lives in. And so the authenticity and the truthfulness that that we need so much in our world of retail right at the moment comes exactly back down to your question. So truthful, real relationships. Social media has changed everything, hasn't it? Because you can put out something in social media and it comes from such a good place, and suddenly you look back at your phone or on computer, and it's gone in a completely different direction. So really think about how you communicate that voice. And if you have one message, 25 years ago, you could take that one message and deliver it in one direction. Now, you have to think of 50 directions on how to do it. So you may speak to the 18-year-old and the 80-year-old with the same story, the same motivation, but with a different tone of voice.
And what's changed, Joe, from growing your first brand to now growing your second brand? Is it social media? What in the retail environment? What's changed?
I'm older. I'm older.
No.
I think what's changed,
approach,
the whole world has changed. What hasn't changed is the product, the people, service, and your team. It's the same basis that I built Joe Malone all those years ago. It's the same things that we build with today. But the world has changed how we communicate. We're seeing generations of young people who are demanding so much more than just a scented candle and a bottle of fragrance or a pair of running shoes or an iPhone. I mean, our whole world is demanding, and the consumer is saying, teach me, educate me, entertain me, show me the world that your product lives in.
Right.
And I want to see all that. I want to hear its language. I want to see its color. I want to hear the music. They're demanding so much more. So
That experience.
that experience, but it goes back to what we're talking about, that human touch, that feel of somebody caring about you buying a product. Because it's easy to sell 1 million bottles. It is. It's much harder to sell the next 500,000 to those same 1 million people. How do we do it? We build relationships.
You can see your passion with what you do. So I want to ask you about selling your first brand. Why did you do it? Gary, and so my husband is my business partner and is the most, I would never be where I am today without him. He is everything I'm not. So he's the left brain and I'm the right brain. But we were 2 young kids setting out in retail. We opened our first shop. We knew nothing. And there we were flying around the world on Oprah, doing things that I'd never dreamed of. And the growth of this little business, and we funded it ourselves. Yeah.
And this little business started to go, and growth started to backfire onto us because we were opening in New York City, we were opening in Sydney, we were trying to open in Paris. And what was happening is every time you take one of those little small brands and you plant them in a territory, which there's the demand and the hunger for the product, you have to put the support team. And of course, that was costing hundreds of thousands of pounds. So I asked myself, I got to the point where we could feel it backfiring on us. And it wasn't a very nice feeling after all that hard work. I was looking for money, deep pocket capital. I was looking for distribution. I needed somebody to teach me because we didn't know. And I don't know if you've heard of Rosemary Bravo. Rosemary Bravo is one of our greatest retailers of our time. She was at Saks and she then went on to be CEO of Burberry and find Christopher Bailey. She's an amazing woman. That lady sat on the floor with me with a map and my husband through America and she taught me retail.
Wow.
She taught me where you go, how you do it, how you put a deal together, and step by step. But it still wasn't enough. So we needed those 3 things, and I needed heart. So money, distribution, and I needed someone that loved the industry. And I met all 3 with Mr. Leonard Lauder. And so when we sold our business to the Estee Lauder Corporation, it was a very, very happy day, and still is. And I would still never, ever take that decision back. It was the best decision for me and for my brand. But we needed that expanse because the brand was going out faster than we can to deliver it.
And then you stepped away from the brand.
Yeah.
That's not easy.
And it was the wrong decision. And again, I write about that in the book. But you know, sometimes wrong decisions we make. We're human beings.
We make mistakes. Right?
It's okay. You can pull it back. And I would never be sitting here with you in this adventure I'm living now if I hadn't. But at the time, it was tough. I'd gone through cancer for a year.
Yeah.
I had a little boy, and I was frightened it would come back. And I went back in as a creative into a business that had moved on in that year, and it needed to move on. It couldn't stay where it was. And I couldn't identify with it. So it was a job I was doing, and I was unhappy. So I made the decision to walk away from the business, making sure that everyone's jobs were safe. That was one of my big kind of things. And Estee Lauder Corporation were amazing. They made sure everyone was completely safe and secure. I was the last person to turn the key in the shop in Sloane Street. And as I walked, I put all the bottles on the shelf for the last time, things I'd done for 10 years of my life. And I walked down the street and I sobbed and I thought I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. And you know what? There's still days. I feel that.
You still do?
Not every day, and certainly not, but where would I have been if? That's sometimes what goes through my head. And it was where would I have been if motivated me to go on and build again, because I couldn't bear to be away from an industry that I knew I could change the world with.
So tell me about building a second business. We talked about some of the things that are different, but I think you said when we talked on the phone, I'm making more mistakes than I did the first time.
Yeah, I don't know why. I haven't got a crystal ball. I haven't made a lot of mistakes for the last 2 years, by the way, but the first 2 years, I got the packaging wrong, I got the distribution wrong. I ran head first into doing a pop-up in Selfridges, and
I love this story. The night before...
You'll see the pictures in the book as well.
The night before your opening.
Exactly. So I'd pulled so far away from the brand that I'd founded because I didn't want any confusion, that I pulled so far away, it didn't represent me. And by this point, it was too late. So we popped up a pop-up shop in Selfridges, and I was there the night that it was being built. So it's 4 a.m. And I could see this brand going up, and I'm thinking, I hate it. What am I going to do? I hate it. It was so humiliating. But I'd done it. I'd signed the check. I mean, for goodness sake. So I went off. I had a little wander around, went to the bathroom, and I came back down the escalators, and right in front of me as I came down, there's no one else in Selfridges, was Jo Malone, the cream and black box. And as I came down, I heard this brand go, "What have you done?" And I was just like, I know, I don't know what I've done. And I went for a second, and of course, if anyone had seen me do this, and I put my hand on the boxes, and I felt all of the emotion of building. Because what I see now is it was my friend. To everyone else, it was a business, but to me, it was my best friend.
Right.
I shared so many emotions with that business and loved it. But I realized it was time to let go. And it was that moment where you're safe, and now I have to go and put this one right. And so it took 2 years to pull around, and now she's flying, so it's all good.
Lessons learned, because I'm thinking about our group here in the audience who might at some point sell a business.
Yeah.
Lessons learned from that process.
Any entrepreneur that sells a business will tell you they learnt from the last one. And would I sell my business today, going back to Estee Lauder again? Absolutely, without a hesitation. They're wonderful. Would I sell it differently? Absolutely, without hesitation.
What would you do? Can I
name,
ask you?
Your name. So that, I didn't anticipate any of that. And why would you? You know, it was my name. I thought I was going to stay forever. But life is never, the landscape we see when we enter a business and sell a business can change dramatically.
Right.
And mine changed. The landscape changed. And so the decision I made there and then became here, or here, however you want to look at it, it was a whole different world. And I didn't anticipate the repercussions of the emotions and also the use of my name. So for me now, it's second nature. But in the beginning of starting Jo Loves, it was, there's Jo Malone, the cream and black box there. There's Jo Malone, the person here. There's Jo Loves that Jo Malone created.
And consumers didn't.
Jo Malone's not over there.
Consumers didn't understand.
Well, that's a legal obligation. So
Yeah.
we had to make, which is probably why I went so far with the red. We had to make sure that nobody was confused. But what I knew in myself was if I sat back and I felt I was too old to go and learn something new, and I was too young to sit there and not do it again. I was caught in that trap.
Yeah.
And that's really why I did. So it was a long, hard haul getting there. There was mistake after mistake. But every mistake I learnt almost 10 times more than I did with Jo Malone, because it was like, don't do it that way. Okay, so what are your options? That's when my dyslexia kicks in. It's like, okay, I can't do that, but I can do this. So with that, where can I go? How can I build? And I realized that with Jo Loves, I had to find something that was who I was, that was true, and that was different. And it was creativity. So I started to invest into creativity. And everything I had, my team, the shop, the product, and I had these challenges from my husband that says, go change the world again wearing fragrance. I want patented product. And I delivered one after the other and created the first fragrance paintbrush, which is my Willy Wonka golden ticket, that paintbrush. She literally has opened up the world for me with that one little thing.
I want to I'm sure we have questions. So can I open it up to the audience? Please. And just say your name and company, if you would, when you stand.
Hi, I'm Mohit Varshne, and my company is Aspiria Transnational. Firstly, I would like to thank you for sharing such a fascinating and motivating story about yourself. It's really heartening to hear such a wonderful thing. One thing I liked what you had been talking about is starting the entrepreneurial education with kids as young as 7 and going up to 17. And unfortunately today, it's in the real world is going on, the entrepreneurial education is actually starting from the age of 17, when a kid generally comes into his A-level or from his undergraduate, that the first time he gets the first taste of something about learning about entrepreneurship formally. Some have a background from their family. So I wanted to know, have you ever tried to bring that entrepreneurial education to actually get delivered from an early stage? Have you thought of that? It could be embedded into the current education system if the young ones get early.
Right. And that's what you're thinking about doing, right? Starting early.
Thank you for asking that question, because that is the crux of what we're talking about. So we're looking at, so in January 2020, and I hope I've got all the, I hold information in my head, and I hope this is correct, but I'm pretty sure it is. January 2020, the national curriculum in this country will change with a wellness program that will be added to it. We are seeing a 30% rise in suicides in our young people. We're looking at the crime that is running through our country that everyone is saying is going to take a decade to put right. Education is not the answer, it's part of the answer, and we have to do something quickly. So my thought process is we can go within that wellness program and start to teach entrepreneurialism from the age, maybe it's from 5 to 17, and we make it each year, we make it interesting and exciting. We tell our stories right the way across every school in the country, that a child will hear at least 3 stories every single year of someone that's built. And what happens then, it becomes second nature to that child. They start to think in a different way. So that's my aim. I started the conversation about 4 months ago, and the conversation has literally picked up. We have so many amazing people. And going back to your question, yes, I've tried it. I did it in our local school, and it was called the 4P program. You created a product, a package, how it looked, you did the pricing and the promotion. Now, what you're looking at there is you're looking at art and science, you're looking at mathematics with pricing, you're looking at art again with packaging and creative thinking, and promotion is English and storytelling. So we're taking all of the 4 core subjects, but pouring them into something. They made yo-yos and packaged them and sold them. Those young children, they were 11 years old. The 2 children who were the problem children in the year, who were either dyspraxic, dyslexic, or there was something, they were the most creative. Wow. They absolutely harnessed in and were able to pull a product together. Those children understood what VAT was, what tax was, how to sell 3 for 2, and suddenly, and that program now still exists in the school, they decided it was so beneficial. It is now an after-school club, which I don't want. I don't want this to be an option. This has to be
part of the core.
Part of the core. And if after-school clubs come from that, that's absolutely fine. But it's still used today. And Tess and I were actually in the shop the other day, and we had a group of young women just doing their O-levels, A-levels, come into the store, learn about creativity. And actually, the headmistress said, what can we do to help? So I don't want to pressurize teachers and the educational system and make them tick more boxes. I want to say, we want to help you. What can we do to equip you, to equip your children, so that they go on to be great business leaders or builders?
That's great. That's great. Can we right there. Can we take a question right there?
Jo, thank you so much. I'm such a fan of yours, so it's an honor to be here.
What's your name?
Sophia, and I run a company called NT. It's a digital media platform where women discuss what to wear and buy with other women and stylists.
Oh.
And we used to be called Style Council, and this is what I wanted to ask you about. We rebranded, and I much prefer the brand now, but I really wanted to ask about your process of building a brand and when it feels right. Because now on digital, you can test pretty much every pixel, and you can get so much sentiment analysis done. But at the end of the day, it also has to be something that's true to you, because you're talking about the brand and you're carrying it. And how do you balance that? When do you stop listening to the tests and the science? And when do you just say, no, this is me, I am creating this, and this is what it's going to be, and if you don't like it, maybe it's not for you. That's a really
Love it. Love Sophia. I'm old school, I'm afraid. We don't have a marketing team telling me how fragrance should be created. So I work very much from my gut. I always have. I wouldn't know how to work in any other way. I think, so I have 5 eyes. I've taken those 5 eyes all the way through my life. Inspiration and innovation. So they're best friends. They sit hand in hand. When you want to be inspired and you want to create, when you want to be creative, you have to find inspiration. So 20 minutes every single day, I find something that really captivates me, and I allow my imagination to run. And then what happens within a month, that becomes second nature. You start to think in a very, very different way. Ignition, the igniting moment. Does it create an emotion within you, what you have created? Because if as I said about people, if it doesn't with you, it's not going to do it with anybody else. instinct, that gut instinct that is really, really important. So I take those eyes and I look at them and I think
These
to
are your
myself,
5 eyes.
oh, sorry. Inspiration, innovation, instinct, ignition, imagination. I can't remember. They're in the book anyway.
They are in the book.
Those 5 eyes, they're like a little compass for me. And whether if I'm employing a new CEO or I'm creating a fragrance or I'm creating a package or I'm going into a new territory, I think, does this inspire? Is this who I am? What is the ignition moment? And I test it against those 5 eyes. And if they don't hit at least 3, I walk away.
Walk away.
I walk away from it because I know that it's probably, but building businesses full of integrity and built upon who you are, especially if it bears your name, by the way, but that is what the consumer is really hungering after, you know, truthfulness. And you look at all the brands that are really accelerating. And why is it that movies and music and theatre, why do they, because they evoke emotion. Let's build brands that evoke emotion, connect with people, truthfulness, hold their hand and say, you know, like SMEs at the minute, 30% of SMEs fail in their first year. That breaks my heart. You know what? I want to take their hand. Banks, take their hand. Take them hand and say, we will show you. Because what you have, we don't, but what we have, you don't. And together, we will make that 30%. Another aim is to take that 30% down to 10. And that is absolutely achievable very, very quickly. So let's build brands that are built on your core values. I suppose that's really what it is, the heartbeats of who you truly are, and don't wander away from them.
Can we ask another question or no? Okay. I know, we could talk with you for hours. It's not your fault. I just want to throw this out because there was so much advice in her book, and you said, because I feel like you should write a pocketbook for people to carry around in their pockets, because you said these great words of wisdom. Entrepreneurs, remember who you are. I'm going to say your words. Don't lose sight of your brand values. Never spend money you don't have. Never be afraid to be a warrior. I love that. And never forget where you were walking. And I think it's just some great advice to help you grow a brand. So thank you. Jo, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.